Hello everyone, this is a quick overview of the deployment architecture and sizing of Device42 components. There are three key components of Device42 in every installation, and you can see them represented in blue in the network segment of our reference architecture on the right. Each installation is going to require at least one of each and potentially more remote collectors and Windows Discovery Service to provide discovery throughout the environment. First is the main appliance, and this is key to every installation. This can be deployed in a client environment in their data center on any hypervisor. It's also available as AMI in AWS or images for Azure and GCP, so it is relatively flexible on where that is deployed. It is a CentOS 7 VM that is pre-configured to import that image to your preferred platform and assign an IP address to that location. And all data is accessed there. So as Discovery runs, it sits within a Postgres database within that main appliance. Now, the resources and sizing of that main appliance will vary based upon the engagement, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, the remote collectors are going to be where all the discoveries ran from, whether that is SSH, vendor APIs, SNMP, against that customer infrastructure, as you can see on the right side. In addition to the remote collector, there is another component for Windows Discovery Service. This is a lightweight .NET service that can be installed to any existing Windows infrastructure, whether that's a physical, virtual Windows VM and that's running server or a guest OS. It does not matter. It just has to meet the minimum Microsoft requirements for the Windows OS, and that is going to connect to a remote collector. Now we leverage that to really be a proxy for WMI. So all WMI connections for the Windows Discovery are made from that WDS. Now it is important to keep in mind after the remote collector and the Windows Discovery Service have been connected, you don't need to log into them individually in order to use them. They are maintained and updated by Device42 automatically once they're connected, and you would select which ones are relevant to use in any given discoveries, which you'll see in other content later as we talk about configuring and setup of Discovery. Now, this is to give you an idea of how that architecture should look like. There are a few key components here. So, of course, our main appliance, and this would be in the chosen infrastructure. This can change based upon the engagement. It might be typically it's easiest to have it in the primary data center where most users access the environment. So, it's locally, it's going to be running and connecting to remote collectors within that environment. And that's where users will access it, or through a VPN, you can tunnel in and connect to the environment that way. Others may choose to have that in their public cloud, and you may see, as we have here, some of the discovery infrastructure in that cloud. So you can have a remote collector or Windows Discovery Service inside of a VPC in AWS to run discovery against EC2 instances and different services there. You could also have the main appliance hosted there. So if you're hosting the main appliance, but the remote collectors are running discovery within the client infrastructure, and you'd rather host the data within your own network, it is possible to do that. You just have to make sure that HTTPS and 443 are available so that the remote collector Windows Discovery Service can communicate back to the main appliance wherever it's hosted. So as you'll note, regardless, in each infrastructure and location, there's typically going to be a remote collector and a Windows Discovery Service. Now, this is usually because of firewall and network segmentation. You may not want to allow communication across these networks and segments, and that's where we can help support that. Now, of course, if it is possible for these segments all to talk to each other, if from this primary main data center, these remote collectors and Windows Discovery services can reach all of the different data centers and even public cloud networks. They all have connectivity to each other without opening up firewall rules, and it's fine to run Discovery across that. That's completely fine. You may not need remote collectors or Windows Discovery Service in each of those segments in that case. However, you do still want to think about scale. So we typically say for every 1,000 devices, about 500 to 1,000 devices, if you are doing application dependency mapping and resource utilization, you're going to want a remote collector or Windows Discovery Service dedicated to those workloads. And that's just going to help facilitate frequent discovery and scheduled discovery completing in a timely fashion. If we start to go above that range, we try to run a discovery of thousands of devices every hour. Well, depending on the complexity of that environment and how much data we're looking to collect, it might not be possible for it to complete in that time. So we do need to be mindful of that. If we plan to get all installed software, services, applications from thousands of hosts and we expect that to complete every 5 minutes, it's probably not the most realistic expectation. However, what is we can say in our discovery, every 5 minutes, I want you to connect to these 50 or 100 hosts and just look at the 8 a.m. sampling interval data. And what that is the current connections and existing or new connections that happen. And it's a lot less metadata that we're collecting. It can be run quite a bit more frequently to identify changes in the environment. But then every few hours, we run that broad discovery where we actually collect more detailed software and application data. And that's something that we talk about as we go through configuring these discoveries. But hopefully this should give you some insight into the scale and scope for these different components, what you're going to allocate for resources from them, and where they're going to be deployed through the environment.